thorough statement. I love, as Henry Thoreau has said, the great naturalist of America, who was delighted to remark, I love nature partly because she is not man, but a retreat from him. This thorough statement concluded two things. Nature is identified with women, and the second one being man is an intruder into nature and to be disliked. The two observations had gone a long way, which sowed the seeds of ecofeminism. If you aren't aware of the term ecofeminism completely, that's okay. Neither are most people. What emerged as a powerful activist as well as academic movement in the 1970s gradually lost its relevance, but as more and more movements seeking climate action and justice gained momentum worldwide, so did the idea of ecofeminism. But what exactly is ecofeminist movement about? And is it of any relevance to today's climate discourse? How can I ensure my rights as a woman are upheld? How can I guarantee that the rights of all living things are respected without diminishing or isolating other marginalized groups in the process? How do I confirm that the sanctity of the planet is cared for? Before we could get an answer for all these questions, I would like to read a beautiful poem shared by one of my friends in the WhatsApp group.
Excuse me, ma'am, sorry.
Yeah.
Ma'am, are you sharing the screen, ma'am?
Yeah.
But it's not visible here, ma'am. You have not shared it, ma'am.
One second.
Yes.
Is visible now, ma'am.
Yeah. What if 2020 isn't cancelled? What if 2020 is the year we have been waiting for? A year so uncomfortable, so painful, so scary, so raw, that it finally forces us to grow. A year that screams so loud, finally awakening us from our ignorant slumber. A year we finally accept the need for change. Declare change, work for change, become the change. A year we finally band together instead of pushing each other further apart. 2020 isn't cancelled, but rather the most important year of them all. I think after this pandemic has started with, I had been reading this poem every day in the morning. And I personally feel that this 2020 is the year which exposed the selfishness, shameless, and the predatory role of the Homo sapiens. I hate to use the word human beings, it's my personal feeling. Nature had to repair itself in the guise of the pandemic. I feel this pandemic has the theme of ecofeminism in the background, and that is why I have picked up with this topic, ecofeminism. Due to climate change, the misnamed natural catastrophes no longer affect only geographical areas traditionally known for their extreme climate phenomena ravaged by hurricanes, floods, or droughts. We are witnessing the chronicle of a death foretold, that of nature. There is no doubt that we are experiencing what some time ago the German sociologist Ulrich Beck called the risk society: pollution, pesticides, herbicides, genetically modified food, preservatives. The list is very long. Today, only economic interests, ignorance, or the adoption of a blind techno enthusiast attitude can prevent us from clearly seeing the manifestations of the ecological crisis. For many people, far too many, environmentalism continues to be the unwanted guest, the party pooper, the enemy. However, the reality that is increasingly firmly knocking on our doors now shows that the environmentalism warnings of past decades were true. We often think of nature in terms of Mother Earth and Mother Nature and see it as a provider of basic resources like water and food. One might argue that we are all connected to nature, which is true, of course. But what if there's a close link between nature and women that brings them together in ways more than one? From a constructivist perspective of gender subjectivity, we can consider that women's interest in caring for nature is not an automatic mechanism related to gender. In general, women have not historically had access to weapons and have traditionally been responsible for taking care of the most vulnerable children, the elderly, and the sick, and maintaining the material infrastructure domestically, like kitchen, clothes, etc., developing in statistical terms a relational subjectivity attentive to others and expressing greater affection. The ecofeminists celebrate the relationship between women and nature through the popularization of ancient rituals centered on the mother goddess, the moon, the animals, and the female reproductive system. This prehistoric era, centered on goddess worship, was dethroned by an emerging patriarchal culture with male gods to whom the female deities were subservient. Nature was further degraded by the scientific revolution of the 17th century that replaced the nurturing earth with the metaphor of a machine to be controlled and repaired from outside. The earth is to be dominated by male developed and controlled technology, science, and industry. Advancement of science, irrespective of social, political, and religious developments, proposed cultural feminism more as a need than as an endeavor. Help, kindness, pity, sympathy, and love are considered to be natural qualities of human beings and hence an equal status for women giving birth to a man. The indispensability canvassed by scientific and technological developments suggested man and women as friends and co travelers in the civilizational growth. John Stuart Mill feels that the kind of scientific and rational thinking was more widespread in Western and American societies and less so in Oriental societies where superstition and tradition haunted to the convenience of the man. The ghastly practice of sati in India, when wife was forced to immolate herself on the pyre of the husband, was discontinued only in the first quarter of the 19th century, when reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy opposed. The practice of selling brides was there in the beginning of the 20th century also. The practice of dowry to bridegroom goes unabated till date. Bigamy and polygamy were legal up to the middle of the 20th century in India. Molestation, rape, and harassment of women are daily incidents even now. However, the oppression of women is not unique but diverse, dissented, and at times derogatory too, which breeds the types of ecofeminism. There are many movements, protests, and activities acting against ecological crisis over the past 3 decades, which are largely responsible for the emergence of ecofeminism, which has recently emerged as an evolving theory. Ecofeminism is both an activist and an academic movement which acknowledge these links that connect the exploitation and domination of both nature and women under patriarchal society. Mary Mellor, a British academic, defines ecofeminism as, I quote, a movement that sees a connection between the exploitation and degradation of the natural world and the subordination and oppression of women. Unquote. Ecofeminism and neologism. was coined by a French writer, Francoise d'Aubonne, in 1974 in her path-breaking book La Féminisme ou la Mort, which was never translated into English. Her fundamental intention was to call out to women to save the planet. Francoise d'Aubonne, a founder of the stream of feminism and ecology, claims that the root cause of domination of women and nature is patriarchy. She has given a sophisticated historical analysis of patriarchy, sustaining that the latter appears at the end of Neolithic period, leading to the conversion of dry to irrigated agriculture with the help of modern technology. The other factors that ultimately provoke ecological degradation are the mastering of fertility and the exhaustion of the resources. Francois asserts that women are life givers, life preservers, and have concern for future generations, whereas men are exploitative, plundering, and subordinate women and nature. As such, she argues that a more balanced relationship between the sexes would translate as a more balanced relationship between production and consumption. Further, she makes a well reasoned argument that human beings and ecology are two sides of the same coin. Without one, the other is not able to exist. As such, both must be subject to limitations so as to maintain the desirable balance between the human and nature. Some theorists, such as Eneshtra King, named it as a third wave of feminism. As we have seen, the first and the second wave of feminism has largely dealt with women's rights, women's bodies, women's sexuality. The third wave has moved beyond these and looked at women's relationship with their surroundings. Feminine qualities such as cooperation, nurturing, being supportive, non-violence, and sensuality are appropriate for creating an environmentally aware society. Because of women's greater bodily involvement with the natural function surrounding reproduction, she is seen as more a part of nature than men. As author Rosemary Fenusco argues, I quote, the foundation of ecofeminism is the notion that a woman's ethics are more closely related to the environment in comparison to those of a man. For example, the female tendency to be a giver and gentle is echoed in nature's qualities to provide everything necessary for survival. While arguably this can be seen as true, the differentiation between feminine qualities and masculine qualities presented in ecofeminism play right into the notion of patriarchy by presenting men as conquerors and women as gentle givers. It undoubtedly creates a divide between men and women, contradicting the feminist movement of equality. Unquote. The connection of women and nature is generally based on three claims of an empirical, conceptual, and epistemological character. First, the empirical claim shows that the first hand victim of the impact of environmental deterioration is women in the name of the development of science and technology because of her close association and dependency on nature. In short, the ecofeminist empirical claim examines the socio-political and economic structures that reduce many women's lives to poverty, ecological deprivation, and economic powerlessness. The second conceptual claim focuses on the construction of society on the basis of a hierarchy and dualism, which reveals patriarchal ideologies as the root cause of domination of women and the exploitation of nature. The third claim is epistemological, centering on knowledge of nature. In this perspective, women have historically been agrarian cultivators and thus favor sustainable and renewable agriculture. Moreover, they are heralded as saviors of nature, invested with the mission to protect, preserve, and nurture the environment. These are the three connections between women and nature which have paved the path for ecofeminism to frame debates on the exploitation of women and nature. According to Karen J. Warren, I quote, "The root cause of domination is to be found in all types of isms, that is, isms of domination like racism, classism, heterosexism, militarism, and naturism, which are unjustified systems of exploitation and subordination. At the center of these isms lies patriarchy, male gender privilege, and power." Unquote. The activist and the academic movement truly emerged in the developing world in the last few decades of the 20th century. But one has to understand that ecofeminism wasn't just one single movement that arose out of single place but went on to spread across the world. It was actually India's Chipko movement in the early 1970s, the Green Belt movement in Kenya later in the same decade, women's participation in the anti nuclear, pro environment movement in the West in the 1980s and 1990s, and similar movements which were themselves unique but also collectively shaped the central philosophy of ecofeminism. That is, women and nature are interconnected in their domination and exploitation, and the nature could only be saved by what is traditionally considered a feminine practice of healing and nurturing. And to look about the ecofeminism in literature, to write about a problem is not necessarily to produce a solution, but to kindle consciousness in the reader's mind. Literature or any art form has no part to solve a problem, but to suggest solutions to the people facing a problem. Towards the last quarter of the last century, ecological balance in nature was endangered, and the technological advancement resulted in environmental pollution, failure of ecosystems, extinction of species, and loss of biodiversity.
Dr.
The
Sunita,
very existence of life systems on Earth was at
Dr.
stake.
Sunita,
Yes, sir.
good morning. This is Benison. I'm sorry
Good
to
morning, sir. Good morning.
there are a few participants who have recorded their feelings here,
Yeah.
saying you're not audible and your voice is very meek. So can you make it louder, please?
Yeah. Sure.
Thank, thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Yeah. I start with the ecofeminism in literature. To write about a problem is not necessarily to produce a solution, but to kindle consciousness in the reader's mind. Literature or any art form has no part to solve a problem, but to suggest solutions to the people facing a problem. Towards the last quarter of the last century, ecological balance in nature was endangered, and the technological advancement resulted in environmental pollution, failure of ecosystems, extinction of species, and loss of biodiversity. The very existence of life systems on Earth was at stake. Creative writer and the English scholar Grisha T. Leger suggested that the eco-feminist literary theory with poetry, novel, essay, and nonfiction is a critical tool to reinterpret the values of nature literature, revisioning the human relationships with the natural world by raising awareness with the alternative stories about landscapes hitherto ignored as nature writing, and reevaluate the male authorships of nature believed to be absolute truths. The so-called Emerson Thoreau line in American literary thought in the middle of 19th century revealed nature's prominence, material conditions of nature, and the cultural adjustments of humans to non-human nature gained importance in the geographical descriptions. Colonial and early national writings in many countries contain details of exploring, mapping, and celebrating the land. It was Charles Dickens and E.M. Forster in his writing Hill of Devi and Passage to India who suggested, I quote, that all facets of human history are implicated in natural history and the environment is not merely a framing device, unquote. Legler enlisted the writings of Gretel Herrich, Annie Dillard, Linda Hazels, Sue Herbel, Alice Walker, Josephine Johnson, Lucy Clifton, Leslie Silk, Joy Hadjo, Mary Oliver, Ursula Le Guin, and Dane Ackerman as the main ecofeminist literary critics of the times. According to Murphy Patrick, I quote, "We, the women, are supposed to abhor war because our procreative abilities make us close to nature, and since men cannot give birth to another human being, they are said to be closer to culture. Their culture includes ammunition, war, and technology, and such developmental things." Unquote. The growing philosophical attitude that human interest in nature is not considered to be the only legitimate interest. Walt Whitman, in his poetry Out of the Cradle Endlessly Rocking, P.B. Shelley's To a Skylark, John Keats' Ode to a Nightingale, and human accountability to environment is a part of text's ethical orientation. If we were to look at some of the post-colonial countries, such as those in Africa and South Asia, particularly India, we realize that these nations have a history of environmental activism and movements even before ecofeminism emerged as an academic discipline in the Western world. In India, the Chipko movement has gained iconic status and is now cited as a highly successful example of grassroots of environmentalism in India. This movement is also key for the way in which it mobilized women. This movement brought about the concept of tree hugging to stop activities such as deforestation, lumbering, and mining. The movement originated in the Garhwal region of Uttaranchal in Uttar Pradesh, India. The state's increasing commercialization and underdevelopment of the Garhwal region was instrument in the conceptualization of this movement, where local women were affected by state-level decisions such as granting private contractors harvest rights for the trees to manufacture cricket bats. Due to excessive deforestation, the year 1970 saw its most devastating floods and equally destructive landslides. And even recently, I think last year, we had seen the same in the Kerala also. In more recent times, other women who have led environmental causes and movements are Medha Patakar, Mahashweta Devi, Arundhati Roy, and C.K. Janu. Medha Patkar heads the Namda Bachao Andolan, a social movement consisting of tribal people, Adivasis, farmers, environmentalists, and human rights activists against the Sardar Sarovar Dam being built across the Narmada River in Gujarat. Mahashweta Devi, both an activist as well as a well-known feminist writer, has dedicated much of her activism and literature to the cause of betterment of tribal people and their environments in India. Arundhati Roy, best known as the Booker Prize winner of The God of Small Things, wields her passionate pen for causes ranging from the Narmada Bachao Andolan to nuclear testing in India and to the support of the separatist demand for Azadi, that is freedom in Kashmir. The latest women to come under spotlight for fighting for an environmental cause is C.K. Janu, an Adivasi woman occupying the Muthanga forest in North Kerala. This was to protest the breached agreement between the Adivasis and the state government to provide 500 acres of land to each Adivasi family. The figure of C.K. Janu as an Adivasi woman leading the cause has given the movement a dimension of subaltern identity politics in addition to social justice and ecological balance. In India, Vandana Shiva is one of the most ardent advocates of ecofeminism. One would tend to consider her work as an ecofeminist of the radical mode. However, Her investigations of the whole development model and its consequences for the earth puts her among the ecofeminists of the communist structure. Vandana Shiva investigates present day science and innovation as a Western, patriarchal, and pilgrim venture which is naturally fierce and sustains this brutality against women and nature. Seeking after this model of improvement has implied a shift far from conventional Indian reasoning, which sees Prakriti as a living and innovative procedure, the female guideline from which all life emerges. Under the clothing of advancement, nature has been misused savagely, and the female standard is no more connected with the dynamism, inventiveness, and holiness of life, but is viewed as aloof and as an asset. This has prompted underestimation, degradation, relocation, and also the subordination and relegation of women. Shiva interlaces the historical background of the Chipko movement mainly with the lives of women of the local communities. This struggle motivated Shiva to expound the lives of individuals who live near to nature and also to suggest steps for the sustainable growth. So these were the activists who had worked a lot and now looking into the ecofeminism in Indian fiction by women. Speaking about women writing in Indian fiction in English and the environment, we will try to look into why it is important to look at what these writers have to offer to the ideology, theory, and the lived material reality of women in and of the environment. The novels we would be discussing are Kamala Markande's Nectar in a Sieve, written in 1954, Fire on the Mountains by Anita Desai in the year 1977, A River Sutra by Geeta Mehta in 1993, The God of Small Things in 1997 by Arundhati Roy, Sohaila Abdulali's The Mad Women of Jogore in 1998, and The Monkey Man in the year 2010 by K.R. Usha. Actually, I tried to pick few more novels, but due to the constraint of time, we were unable to. Okay. These novels show a distinct progression of issues pertaining to post-colonial ecofeminism from an impoverished village in Markandeya's novel to the developed and glitzy urbanized city of Bangalore in K.R. Usha's novel. In highlighting the rhetoric of globalization, that the city presents equal opportunities for all, K.R. Usha's novel presents an opportunity for critique in urban ecofeminism. The novels span a time frame from the immediate post independence era to one in which globalization is seen to be at its peak. Kamla Markandeya's novel, written in 1954, reflects issues and a style of writing particular of the immediate post-independence years. Typically classified as social realism, Markandeya writes in a sentimental language about the developmental challenges India was facing post-independence, there being a political commitment to the land in the Gandhian discourse of its time. There is then a shift to the post independence era characterized by a Nehruian discourse emphasizing on industrial development, illustrated in Markandeya's novel by the emergence of the tannery in the village and its resultant effects on the people and the environment. Her simple and lyrical language in the novel is a ruse for something darker, where although the village people are seen as authentic, she simultaneously highlights the reality to be found in the harsh actuality of the people's poverty in the village. Rukmini, the character Rukmini in the story, is presented in a linear chronological narrative, narrated in the first person by Rukmini herself as an elderly peasant woman as she reminisces about her life so far. The novel starts with a nostalgic reminiscence in the first paragraph. By the fifth paragraph in the novel, the reader is taken back in time to her childhood, and it is from then on the narrative moves. It moves forward in a straight chronological order, ultimately ending at the point where it began. Rukmini's early identity as a child, bride, wife, a young woman, and mother echoes cultural ecofeminism's claims that her closeness with the land is intimately linked to her body and spirituality. However, Rukmini's identity is mediated through both her labor and love of the land. Her interaction with the land integrates both production and reproduction, thereby giving it a materialist dimension. This is especially seen through the experience of an identity crisis when she is evicted from her land, thus making her neither of the land nor of the city. Anita Desai has also written about women and environment in her novels. Kamla Markandeya and Anita Desai wrote about specific and private lives about women, nonetheless making deeply political statement about social issues and Indian society at large. The focus on the specific and the private is one reason why women writers from this category are often overlooked and not taken seriously. Markandeya's Nectar in a Sieve and Desai's Fire on the Mountain both portray the darker shades of nature and the simultaneous conjunction of the darker aspects of the women concerned. Rukmini and her family nearly starve to death when nature is unpredictable and there is a drought in Markandeya's novel. While Rukmini accepts the lot that is meted out to her, her daughter, Era, is forced into prostitution due to their dire financial state. Ela Das' rape in Desai's novel is mercilessly carried out in the darkness of the fields that are supposed to sustain life. The atrocities that the women suffer in Desai's novel find their culmination in Raka, who sets the forest on fire in the end. Maya in Cry the Peacock, and Raka, Nanda, and Ela in Fire on the Mountain are all middle class women. This class position, though privileged, still does not prevent these women from being oppressed in different ways, though this is clearly not the same as what a lower class and lower caste women would go through. The concept of ecofeminism receives a new, different cultural context in the hands of Indian women novelists. It is all about the women's equation with nature and an act of reaching out to nature in her crisis and despair. Coming close to nature, the women imbibes the serenity and strength of this unchanged, immortal nature. Geeta Mehta, in her novel River Sutra, beautifully portrays the Narmada as a young and attractive woman. The river is presented as an organic, being full of human emotions, as the narrator tells us. I quote, I can hear the heartbeat pulsing under the ground before she reveals herself at last to the anchorites of Shiva deep in meditation around the holy tank of Amarkantak. And then the steam took the form of women, the most dangerous of a kind, a beautiful virgin, innocently tempting even Aztec to pursue her, inflaming their lust by appearing at one moment as a lightly dancing girl, as yet another as a romantic dreamer, at yet another a seductress loose limbed and the lassitude of desire. Unquote. In Arundhati's novel, The God of Small Things, quite a famous novel for which she has won the Booker Prize, delineates interconnections between subordinated human beings and non human nature, views the hierarchy of dualisms between men and women, development and underdevelopment, as an ideological justification for domination. Roy critiques the justification of the destruction of nature and the oppression of subjugated human beings as an inevitable process in the progressive development of post colonial India. Such oppression is well depicted through the ill fated intercaste love of the main characters of the God of Small Things. Amu, a diverse Syrian Christian, and Veluta, an untouchable. Set in Eminem in Kerala, the novel interweaves past events of 1969. Rahel and Amu's daughters returns to Yemen from America after hearing of her twin brother Esther's return. 23 years on from the deaths of their half English cousin, Sophie, and Veluta. And soon after their mother Amu's death, Esther and Rahel have drifted apart over the years due to the traumatic events of 1969, in which they witnessed the police violently beating Veluta and then were forced to falsely denounce him as Sophie's kidnapper and the cause of her death, although they know that she had drowned by accident. Highlighting India's rigid social structure and society's collective violence against other human beings, Roy's novels discloses the injustice underlying the hierarchy dualism and instrumental reasoning that are used to justify violence against the disenfranchised. Indeed, Roy's sense of outrage at the violence against subjugated women and lower caste groups who are cast as inferior beings by the dominant power group in post colonial India reflects an eco feminist consciousness. Her critique of patriarchal violence, domination of subjugated people, and the exploitation of the natural environment are extended to the national and global levels, where she exposes the violence wrought by rationalizations of economic logic and optimistic narratives of national development. Roy's post colonial ecofeminism reflects in many ways on the agendas of post colonial globalization that have brought about environmental damage and violent exploitation of nature. More contemporary novels, such as Abdul Ali's The Mad Women of Jogre, published in 1998, is a novel written at the orchard farm of her father. In an interview for the Indian Express, Abdul Ali admits that her novel is imbued with the spirit of her place and reflects the issues of her people. But she agrees that the animals in the farm that figured in the novel are really a part of the family and especially the dog. The ecofeminist principles of the author find a strong icon in the protagonist Ifrat, other than the mad women, Veena and Farzana. The novel treats the twin oppressions of nature and women extensively and promotes an environmental ethic that would care for and liberate both from the domination of men. As Ifrat feels, she is not one person but equals a dozen women. She represents the intuitive approach of women and the harmonious relationship they establish with nature. She feels the rain in her veins, even when it is too hot and dry for people to even imagine it. But the spell cast by her does work. She proves the Weather Bureau wrong, and the monsoon sets in earlier than the prediction. Along with the people of the valley, the birds and the animals also join the locals in witnessing the exciting dance of the mad women. The author herself feels the, I quote, blank skies start to vibrate with a force that works under your skin and makes you crazy for something, unquote. And to get on to K.R. Usha's Monkey Man, she depicts the Western culture to influence the work centric people with their style of fast food, leaving behind the traditional homemade foods. The novelist has presented the disgusting picture of the new Bangalore that has become a highly commercialized metro city with soaring real estate prices, heavy traffics, and cultural changes. Usha has successfully dealt these issues through her representation of the natural environment. Bangalore, which was once filled with a natural beauty, is now transformed into a land of artificial beauty with big buildings, bridges, and shopping malls. This shows the power of human beings over the environment. Western patriarchal notions construct a public world of politics, professionalism, commerce, production, and social life that are separate from the private world of family and domestic relations, a division that gives supremacy to men and subordinates women. Thus, nature has become the victim of the industrialization that paves way for cultural classes and degradation. The attractive green cover landscape with beautiful gardens and parks are no more the center of attraction. The city is covered with high tech modern buildings and shopping malls that gain the attention of youngsters. The tall buildings and bridges enable the city to be identified as developed and modernized city that caters to the needs of younger generation people whose thoughts are influenced by Western ideologies. Not only natural environment undergo changes with new technological advancement, even the change of culture in women characters are clearly depicted. Usha has dealt with women characters who are affected to a larger extent because of the materialistic society. The marriage life depicted through Lily, wife of Srinivas Murthy, and Mani, mother of Neela, is a failure. The depiction of life of Srinivas Murthy and Leela reveals that they are not on good terms. Though Usha has not completely dealt with Lily's character, yet the sense of failure in her married life is depicted. The marital life of the couple seems to be unfruitful and distracted because of no children. Man perceives women as a commodity to cater his sexual needs and to undergo the basic role of reproduction and nurturing. This impact of childlessness might have been one of the major causes for failure in relationships. In my view, this theory, ecofeminism, has been worth presenting for two reasons. Firstly, the present ecological concerns compel us to increasingly pay attention to such issues. And secondly, this analysis has consisted in a new reading of Indian English writings, helping us understand green literature and the possible contribution to alternative perspectives on ecofeminist discourse. It also suggests that only through changing our day to day relationships and activities towards more harmony and sustainability, we can contribute to the well being and overall empowerment of the whole ecological system. Inspiration can be drawn from the Palestinian poem, The Seed Keepers, which echoes in my mind each time I think of ecofeminism and the vagaries of the so called scientific revolutions. Burn our land, burn our dreams, pour acid onto our songs, cover with sawdust. The blood of our massacred people, muffle with our technology, the screams of all that is free, destroy. Destroy our grass and soil, raze to the ground every farm and every village our ancestors had built, every book, every law, and all the equality and harmony. Flatten with your bombs every valley, erase with your edits our past, our literature, our metaphor, denude the forests and the earth till no insect, no bird, no word can find a place to hide. Do that and more. I do not fear your tiny, I do not despair ever, for I guard one seed, a little live seed, that I shall safeguard and plant again. This was taken from the book Biopiracy, The Plunder of Nature and Knowledge. And I thank everyone for listening to this concept on ecofeminism, which was quite interesting and which has to be discussed in this pandemic times. Over to Christy.
Anybody like to have any question? I hope there are no questions. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a wonderful session, and it was very to say, I don't have words. When I was seeing the slides, it was very, very nice, very understanding. Actually, when we shared in the YouTube, we had
Hello.
Excuse, ma'am, who's it? Yes. Hello.
Can you hear me, Christy?
Yes, sir. Dr. Vincent.
Somebody wanted to ask a question. Is
Yes,
she on
sir.
the line, or I would like to make one or two comments?
Yes, sir. So, ma'am, Sunita, ma'am.
Sunita, madam, I would like to
It's nice
congratulate you.
Thank you.
It's a Very beautiful in it lecture, I should say, on ecofeminism. And the way you explained it, you were thorough with the subject that you are dealing. And a number of insights you have given into ecofeminism. And I can understand your love towards nature, the way you beautifully narrated the ecofeminism. I have some objections to feminism.
Yeah.
Where I wouldn't like, because these objections are common with the male again, you know. Yes, yes, yes. And coming to ecofeminism, in one part of your lecture, you said, you know, you are procreators, and because you are procreators, you are very close to the nature. And our respect to you, because nobody can do the job that you do, you female. You are, I should say, you are blessed with that, because, you know, in the procreation, male are kept out, though they are equally responsible for this procreation, but it is not visible. It's not visible. The creation is not visible there.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, the female or feminine gender is more respected in that manner. But coming to nature, even the male society or male gender loves the nature as much as or more than, I should say. It's my personal experience, more than sometimes more than the female do. And that particular, point that, you know, because you are procreators, you are very close to the nature. And you, I'm not saying you only understand the nature. That is not, that was not the, that was not the angle in your discussion.
Yeah.
But when you discuss the ecofeminism, please take the male gender also along with you. Because the poem that you read at the end, it's, you know, it's such a beautiful poem. Even male shed tears when something happens to the nature. Okay.
Yeah.
So ecofeminism also, even the male have equal role to play in ecofeminism. That's what wanted to share with you. So thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Madam. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You know, thank you for your presence. Actually, we're honored to have you here, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else have a question? I got a question asking ma'am that how to differentiate between feminism and ecofeminism.
Okay. So, actually, I spoke about this related to NECTAR King, where the first wave and the second wave of feminism was more about women, the body, the sexuality, how she appears to be, how she was, dominated by men. But when it comes to ecofeminism, she came to know more about the surroundings where she was living like. And that's how in the 19th and 20th century, we could see many women activists coming too. And that is how ecofeminism came into existence. They, along with themselves, the nature or their surroundings was also given equal importance.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm here.
Actually, the discussion completely is based on Indian perspective.
Yeah.
But when we see the American or any other part of the world, there we see also the domination of animals also.
Yeah.
That we see in Fire on the Mountain.
Yeah.
Of Anita Desai.
Yeah.
And
no, I have picked up only with few areas because of this 50 or 55 minutes of time. I thought I wouldn't be able to cover all the things. So I have picked up only with a few things where I could discuss here in this session.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As for the participants, we have given an assessment and a link. Actually, the previous link was not working, you said, and I have checked it and I've given again, and the responses are we are getting responses into it. So please check your connection, and again, please click the feedback link as well as assessment link. Thank you, Sumita ma'am. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. We hope to meet you soon, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much,
so
ma'am.
nice of you all. And thank you, one and all.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye.
Participants, tomorrow we will be having a lecture on an absurdism, and the same link. You know, you need not message me because this is a recurring meeting, so you will be having the same link every day. Steffi, I've given the assessment link, Steffi. I'm giving again.
Hello.
Hello.
Christy ma'am, good afternoon.
Rajan Lal sir, good afternoon.
Yes ma'am, sorry, मैं थोड़ा आज busy था, so I was able to join late, but I think session is going to be over.
Session got over, sir.
So would you please send me the assessment and feedback form?
Yeah, it's there in the chat box. You can have it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, assessment link is not working.
No, it's working now. I've sent again. I'm getting responses. I checked it.
Okay, okay. Assessment and feedback both.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, assessment is still not working.
Assessment is not working still.
Yes, ma'am.
It's working. Assessment link is working now.
Yeah, it's working. I checked.
Yeah, it's working.
Don't use the you use please the last one which I sent it recently. That one.
Yeah, both links are working now.
But on my phone, it is not working.
There must there must be some problem. Yeah,
Ma'am, it's
Sir,
still
don't
not
use.
working.
It's working. Please see into it.
It is written
Ma'am, still
dynamic
not
link not
working.
found.
No,
Dynamic
you
link
are
not
using the
found.
old link. Excuse me. You're using the old link. I
And the
have
last
posted
one,
now.
the last one which you sent, it is not working. I just went to it.
Ma'am, I'm using the last one. It's still not working.
Yeah, just check this now. I think it must be a congestion, please. I have received 10 responses. Why it's not working? It is working now. In the feedback form, please remove the hyphen at the end. You should be working. Because I have written a hyphen and a feedback, so you would be pasting that hyphen. So to remove the hyphen, your feedback is working. For feedback, I've received 100 responses. So it is working. I'll be posting in the group as well. So if you're not having enough time, you can see the group.